was killing myself with the food I eat, toxic to my health, till I got the news. There's another path that I could choose. And now
Welcome to the New Health Conversation television show, coming to you live from our Denver, Colorado studios. I'm your host and moderator, Coach Steve Toth, and here with us is Peter Greenlaw, who is known as the world's most prominent investigative scientist. Welcome to the show.
Thanks so much, Steve.
Absolutely. And our theme today is, what role does stress play in our overall health and the very real costs that is attributable to stress? And also here with us, our guest, Dr. Nick Messina. And by his own admission, he is a recovering doctor, and he's joining us from Arizona. Welcome to the show. Great to have you. And the leading question about stress would be I'm really curious about putting our arms around what does it really cost us?
Well, it's ironic that there's a Stanford University says that chronic stress is now our #1 killer. So the implications are just they're so massive because, well, first of all, what do you think the #1 stressor is? Let's talk about that before we even go any farther. What do you think the #1 stressor is?
Well, I'm not a good one to ask because I already know.
Oh. Well, the number
it's
one.
Money.
You're absolutely
it's
right.
Money.
You're absolutely right. And I think also it's important that people understand really what is stress. And in this book, The Cortisol Connection by Sean Talbot, this whole book is really about stress and cortisol. And he says, let's start off with a tidy definition of stress. For our purposes, we'll define it as what you feel when life's demands outweigh your ability to meet those demands. So basically, stress is being caused by money, relationships, traffic, which we have none in Denver,
Work.
right? Work,
yeah, no.
all of these things. And the problem...
Not eating the right food.
Not eating the right food. However, here's the more important point. That stress is needed in the body. We have to have stress in order for the body to function. But when it becomes chronic and continuing, that's when the problems really start to, and that's when we start to pay the prices, okay?
So is there such thing as good stress?
Yeah, there's good stress. I mean, for example, if you're going to run 100 yards, you want stress. It's actually our friend. It's a natural process in the human body. For example, it does things like it helps to regulate blood pressure. Dr. Messina can comment that in a minute or so about the physiological things that are going on in the human body. But essentially, stress, that's what becomes such a dichotomy here, because you, on the one hand, you need stress, but again, life is about moderation, right? It's not about excess. And because our life has become so demanding, and of course, we got cell phones, and we got the internet, and we got Twitter, and Twit, and Facebook, and everything you name, right?
I just remembered another stressor.
What's that?
My kids.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And there's no pill for that.
There's no pill for that. No, certainly not, not one that I'm aware of. And see, the other thing that stress is interesting because it's really made up of two other cofactors. One is cortisol, okay? Cortisol is actually called the stress hormone, and its job is to regulate stress, but when it goes sort of unchallenged, it now does really bad things. It actually stops the body from burning fat. Now we start to gain weight. It uses muscle instead of fat, which is a horrible thing. It reduces the density of our bones and shrinks our brains. But other than that, it's great stuff.
Oh.
In addition, chronically high cortisol levels lead to high insulin levels. And when the body has high insulin, guess what the message goes to our body? Store fat, store fat, store fat. Those two cofactors contribute to another condition, which is called oxidative stress, which is a major component in accelerating the aging process. What are the prices? They're huge. Dr. Messina, are you with us? What's your take on what I just said?
I'm in agreement with pretty much everything you said, Peter.
You disagreed with me on anything? I'm kidding.
No, not on those particular topics. You know, the question was...
Conflict makes good television.
Yes, yes, conflict makes good television. But the question was, what is the price? You know, quite honestly, stress is the cause of 80 to 85% of all human illnesses and diseases. When I was seeing patients, surely those numbers played out. 80 to 85% of all office visits in a primary care setting are stress-related. And greater than 60% of all of those visits are related to financial stress, as was previously mentioned. I searched the PDR and I could not find one pill to prescribe that would alleviate financial stress. And trust me, I'm sure they're trying to work on one, but I don't think they're going to come up with it. We could take away some of the symptoms, we could numb people out, but true financial stress is something that a pill will not take away. It kept us alive for centuries. The cavemen needed it to outrun a saber-toothed tiger, but after that, you know, they were sitting around the campfire, cooking the meat and relaxing. In today's world, we have so much information overload, relationship overload, social media overload, that we're constantly the victims of chronic stress.
Well, let me comment now, Steve. I've got some major studies here. They said this same state of being overly stressed has resulted in nearly 90 million cases of diseases with no known causes, such as chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia, irritable bowel, recurrent yeast infections, autoimmune, chronic back pain, and other nonspecifics. And then researchers from the NASA Institute of Health have shown that too much cortisol, which I talked about, can lead to a wide range of modern diseases, including anxiety, insomnia, depression, memory problems, fatigue, diabetes, muscle loss, osteoporosis, hypertension, cancer, and especially weight gain and obesity. The American Medical Association, as Dr. Messina said, stated that stress was the cause of 80 to 85% of all human illness. 95 million Americans suffer from some kind of stress-related symptom for which they take medication. And the American Institute of Stress in Yonkers, New York, estimates that 90% of all visits to doctors are for stress-related disorders. That's what we're up against. That's the price.
Well,
how horrible is that?
Can either one of you maybe convert that into dollars? What are we spending on stress?
Well, I just happen to have that right here.
Oh, wow.
It is estimated that American businesses lose an estimated $200 to $300 billion per year to stress-related productivity loss and other costs. Listen to this. According to the Centers for Disease Control, 80% of healthcare is spent on stress-related disorders. These ailments include cardiovascular disease, hypertension, headaches, ulcers, anxiety, allergies, asthma, and cancer. And constant chronic stress can also suppress the immune system, thereby making the body more susceptible to diseases, even the common cold and flu.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, what's also really interesting to me, and it's, wow, do you realize that Walgreens are getting bigger? They're getting oversized. There's a new store on Wadsworth and Alameda. It's 2 stories. The second level is all drugs. The first level is pop and other stuff. So where is this going?
Ask Dr. Messina.
How much bigger are drugstores going to get?
Oh, they're going to become huge. It's going to become the future Walmart. You know, stress is big business. Toxicity is big business. Nutritional deficiency is big business. This is what we've been talking about, is that it's a case of the emperor's new clothes. Everyone knows all this stuff is going on. America's getting heavier and heavier. People are feeling more and more fatigued. People are more and more stressed. And the overall satisfaction with life is dwindling, and nobody seems able to pinpoint it, and that's the problem. People are trying to pinpoint it instead of admitting that there's several factors at play and that they're all interconnected. So no one's approaching it in a holistic manner.
Okay, and I understand that you two, and you talk about this in this new book that's coming out, the TDOS syndrome, TDOS. Right. So how did you connect it? What are the dots that you connected?
Well, I didn't know that much about stress, to be quite honest with you. I knew that I had it. I didn't understand it. And I thought stress was like this single thing. But like I said, when stress becomes chronic, then cortisol stays high, it pushes insulin up, and now it produces this oxidative stress. And oxidative stress is really the worst one, because one of the things it does, it destroys the mitochondria in the human body. Now, the mitochondria are the engines of our cells. We have 100 trillion cells, but we have 100,000 trillion mitochondria. They're the engines of life. It's what gives us our life force, okay? And when you have chronic, unrelenting stress that produces oxidative stress, it basically begins to destroy the mitochondria, producing, you've heard of free radicals. Mm-hmm. Free radicals are like really bad things, okay? It's really sort of a deterioration of things, and it's like this residue that's kind of left. And the more free radicals you have, typically, the less health you're going to enjoy. Dr. Messina, would you comment on that from a medical standpoint of view about mitochondria and about oxidative stress and why that is such a horrible thing that most people are, including myself, completely unaware of?
Sure. I mean, to really put it in a simple form, the mitochondria are the engines of the cells. And kind of like with a car, engine produces byproducts such as exhaust, and the mitochondria are no different. It's the engine of the cell. It's producing a byproduct, which are these free radicals. And the body has systems in place. They have enzyme systems to clear out these free radicals. And there's several, and I won't go into detail and make this very complicated. I like to keep things simple. But suffice it to say, when we're getting a lot more free radicals into the environment from toxicity, from nutritional deficiency, and from stress, then what's happening is our body's metabolic systems are getting overwhelmed. I always like to use metaphors. Probably a lot of people listening to this remember an I Love Lucy episode, Lucy and Ethel at the Chocolate Factory. And it's an old classic with the conveyor belt. And, when they were first doing it, they had to put the foil on the chocolate, and they were doing just fine. More chocolate started coming down. They got overwhelmed. They started sticking it in the hat down their blouse. The same thing's happening to our body. It's getting overwhelmed. And what we need is something to support it. If our own enzymatic systems can't produce antioxidants to clear these free radicals, then we need to be doing something to help them out and to not cause that overwhelming situation at the conveyor belt. Unfortunately, the typical American diet is not rich in these antioxidants. Toxicity puts further stress on our metabolic systems, and that's why we have the situation we have.
So let's mention some, maybe some solutions that we can let our viewers know about.
Well, there's some very, very powerful antioxidants out there that are really accessible to anybody. One is called turmeric, which is a natural substance that you can get. There are many, many antioxidants out there that you can have. In previous shows, we mentioned trace minerals. I want to clarify. Trace minerals are on the periodic table. You can go and there's a list. It's things like, it's copper and it's gold, but it's also things like molybdenum, selenium, boron. And that effectively is what we've destroyed in our soils with all the herbicides and pesticides. Now, the cool thing about it is they are natural in nature. It's what the plants absorb from the soil that we were intended to eat those plants to give us these trace minerals. And you can find pretty, basic trace minerals in a health food store. They're fairly abundant. But there's lots of other things, one of which would be to avoid things that can cause you to have free radicals in the first place, which unfortunately one of them is stress. Mm-hmm. And one of the things I want to say about stress, that there's a new study that says is just thinking of food causes, going on a diet causes stress. And that absolutely when you lower the calories, the one thing you'll guarantee is that you're going to gain weight. Because the body is so craving for these trace minerals and rare earth elements that are, honestly, if there was one thing I could tell everybody out there in the world, the one thing that you could massively change your health would be to get yourself trace minerals. And like I said, a lot of health food stores carry them. And there are about 70. So you want to make sure that you can get most of them, and they're listed. It's part of the periodic table. But
can we put this on our website at some point?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
But it is things. I was surprised. One of them is arsenic. Really? But remember, it's trace minerals. But the body requires tiny amounts of all of these in combination to make them work. Dr. Messina, you, from a medical standpoint of view, can probably support that about trace minerals being one of the most important things that anybody can be taking. It's fairly easy to do.
Oh, absolutely. The trace minerals are the cofactors for our normal enzymatic antioxidant function. Glutathione is probably the most powerful antioxidant in our body, but we need to take cofactors into our body to assist in its production. A good protein source is also essential. We need a good quality protein, high in cysteine, and cysteine together with the trace minerals will increase glutathione production. And glutathione is so important because it functions not only as an antioxidant, but also as a toxin hunter too. So it's very, very important to do what we can from a nutritional basis and from, being in touch with what we know is toxic, trying to avoid it, to help assist our bodies to clear these free radicals.
Yeah, great.
Well, another one that I didn't mention that is readily available is CoQ10. CoQ10 is one of the most important things, and Dr. Messina, I want him to comment on this in just a second, but I want everyone to get this. When you take a statin, let's say, because you have high cholesterol, okay, and I'm not opposed to them, don't get me wrong, but one of the things it does, it depletes the body's ability to utilize CoQ10. So you need a CoQ10 to make up for this deficiency. I don't understand it exactly medically. So Dr. Messina, can you clear up that? Because CoQ10 is one of those things that's readily available that most people don't know about that could really drastically improve their health.
Yeah, CoQ10, just to keep it very simple, is integral in a lot of enzymatic processes in the body. And we make it naturally up until about age 35, and then we don't anymore. So it becomes increasingly important for us to consume it. So we have to find a good source of CoQ10. And what Peter just mentioned about statins is absolutely correct. Anybody taking any kind of statin medication really needs to be taking supplemental CoQ10 because they're usually in an age category where they're no longer making the CoQ10, and the statin is inhibiting their ability to absorb whatever it is they're taking into their diet.
Now, I want to be, for a moment, just the voice of our viewers, okay? Because, Dr. Messina mentioned simplicity, and our viewers and people in general like to take this in a simple way as well. And there's all kinds of multivitamins available on the market, and people have this understanding and perception that as long as they go into a store and they just pick up any brand, and they just pay $12 or $14 or whatever it is, their stuff is handled. How accurate is that?
Well, one of the big misconceptions, for example, if you take vitamins, okay, like let's say you take vitamin C, but if you don't have trace minerals, the body can't use vitamin C. In other words, vitamins exist at the behest of trace minerals. That's why they're so doggone important, and that's what most people don't understand. So when you're taking a multivitamin, you want to make darn sure that it also has minerals in there, because otherwise the body can't use it.
Wow.
Another huge misconception, and we live in a place where there's a lot of sunshine. However, I travel in other parts of the country. Do you know if you live in a northern climate, one of the most destructive things you can do, and Dr. Messina will back me up, I'm sure, is vitamin D3. Vitamin D3 is one of the most important things that we can, and that's readily available. But again, it's the form. A lot of people take it in a pill form. I happen to take it in a liquid form because it's much more easy for the body to utilize it. Dr. Messina, can you comment on vitamin D3 and its importance? again, to our overall health and wellness and about the awareness that people want in watching this show. What can I do to live healthier longer? What's a simple way, not complicated, that I can maybe make a huge difference in my life just by making some simple choices?
Well, you know, you mentioned vitamin D3, and we could rack that up on the list of developing epidemics. We actually have a vitamin D3 epidemic, a vitamin D3 deficiency epidemic going on in this country, maybe even worldwide. You mentioned normal climates. Here in sunny Arizona, it's going on too. The reason being, we have a lot of sun here, but guess what? We use sunblock. We need the sun to activate the metabolic pathways to convert the vitamin D in vitamin D3. So vitamin D3 is the precursor, so we need to be taking that. A lot of people are taking vitamin D, but, you know, any label in that simple question, are all vitamins created equal? It really doesn't matter how much of the vitamin, you know, you're getting that's on the label. It's really how much your body's absorbing it and making sure it goes to where it needs to go. So quality is very important. And just one vitamin or one vitamin supplement is just not going to do the trick. You know, we need all of the B-complex vitamins. We need all of the fat-soluble vitamins. We need all of the trace minerals. We need protein, carbohydrate, essential fatty acids. The body's a very complex machine, and it needs complex fuel to function properly. So unfortunately, we live in a world where people look for quick fixes, and they're looking for a magic pill or a magic potion, and I'm here to tell you it doesn't exist. We really need to become aware of what it is that our body needs on a daily basis to function optimally, and do our best to get it into us, and also to take great pains to get out of us what doesn't belong there.
Well, I'd like to address the world audience here and just say that the problem that we're facing is that if you just take a multivitamin, as you were saying, Steve, it still isn't enough. We want to give you it's sort of a buffet, a broad spectrum. One of the things that we know, for example, about D3, if you lack it, it absolutely has been proven as a contributing factor to speeding up the aging process. Yeah. One of the things we've mentioned in previous shows, people have to understand the significance of what happens when you're lacking in these things. The nutritional deficiency in these specific areas, again, the show today's on stress. It causes stress in the body. The body's saying, Steve, how come I don't have enough D3? D3 is critical for preventing many diseases and things. And when we don't have enough of it, like people think, oh, I'm out in Colorado 320 days a year of sunshine, but they're putting sunscreen on, they're not getting the vitamin D3. Yeah. So these simple little tips can make such an enormous difference. And one of the problems, ladies and gentlemen, with processed food, let's take turkey or ham or things like that, it's coming from cows that have been fed corn. And corn is not native to their diets. Their stomachs, if they didn't give them antibiotics, would literally explode. So they gave them antibiotics, and now they're giving it to all the animals, whether they're sick or not, because it causes them also to gain weight. So when your body gets, let's say, a protein source that isn't a good one, like, I hate to say it, but like a hot dog, it takes you 3 months to recover, because we make 1 billion cells a minute. And when you get a bad source of protein, which makes up 50% of the dry weight of the human body, well, guess what else happens? You put stress on the body. See, all these things sort of lead down the same road towards stress. And then stress has all these fingers that spread out and do all these other horrible things to us, like raise our insulin levels, raise our cortisol levels, create oxidative stress, create free radicals, destroy our mitochondria. And there are steps we need to take. And food, on one of my other shows, says food will never be enough again. That's why supplementation, the right kind of supplementation, is good. Now, here's another thing that I learned. When you eat corn-fed beef, corn-fed chicken, corn-fed turkeys, I don't care, one of the things is they're extremely high in what are called omega-6s. Now, we've all been told, and again, I want Dr. Messina to back me up here, that we need omega-3s and we need omega-6s in a ratio of about 3 to 1. In other words, we should have about 3 omegas to 1 omega-6s. The problem is in some of these processed meats where the animals have been fed corn, those ratios can be 20 and 30 to 1 in other words, 20 times as much omega-6 as you want. And what that does, it blocks the body's ability to absorb the omega-3, which we need for coronary heart health. So there's, again, it's not just a matter of you taking omega-3s, it's avoiding too many omega-6s, which is in all the corn oils, all the stuff. Do you remember about 20 years ago when the big alarm, oh my gosh, saturated fat, we're all going to die, right? Mm-hmm. Well, 20 years later and 50 studies later, when they had us eat polyunsaturated fats, guess what it did? It caused you to gain weight. It raised your heart attack risk because it blocked the body's ability to absorb the omega-3s. Doctor, I really want your input on this, Dr. Messina.
Well, it's actually very fascinating because as we've started to put this book together, I started to search the data, on clinical studies and everything. And that whole campaign was launched nationwide, and it was based on faulty data.
Go figure.
And they really didn't admit it until, about 50 years later, when we have an obesity epidemic, a type 2 diabetes epidemic, and they're still giving the same information. And it's just getting embarrassing. And they finally admitted, well, the data wasn't sound.
So, well, thank you,
really?
Thank you, Doc. So I'm just trying to put myself in the shoes of the viewer.
I know.
So,
we're not trying to make it complicated, but we want people to understand.
I understand.
There's no one single approach,
I understand.
and food will never be enough again.
But we are also saying that people need to become more knowledgeable and need to be educated. But as I'm listening to you and Dr. Messina, this is a lot of information to absorb and understand.
Right.
And are we asking too much of the general public? Because the problem is not just in health. The problem exists in education. Mm-hmm. It exists in finance. So how many master degrees do people need to pass to be able to live a satisfactory life?
Well, here's what I would say to you. We're living in an extremely complicated world now. Like I said, cell phones and Facebook and all these other things, right? That didn't exist 10 years ago. So the speed of life has speeded up. Now, here's what the problem is with that. The speeding up of that life also increases stress, cortisol, chronic fatigue, now exacerbated by the lack of nutrients, things like vitamin D3, the CoQ10s, the omega-3s, all of those kind of things. We see all the disease statistics exploding, okay? We now know that 80% of all healthcare costs is going to basically 5 chronic diseases. We spend most of the healthcare dollars in the last 4 or 5 years of a person's life because they've been treated over and over again for the same condition. You can't imagine if someone, and I don't want to say just, if they just started to take vitamin D3 alone, just that would make such an enormous difference, okay? And we're not telling someone what to do. We're saying, look, based on the science, and you can do your own research. You don't have to read the 500 books that I've read or spend 25 years as a physician as Dr. Messina. It's a very complicated problem. See, that's what I was saying. You can't ever understand the solution if you don't understand the problem. It is not simple, okay? What we're attempting to do with this show and this network is to go out to you people in the world and say, look, here's what we know. Here's the scientific evidence. Here's a medical doctor, my good friend and co-author, who's saying, yeah, from a medical standpoint of view, that drugs are not going to solve all of our problems, and we're not going to have enough drugs to deal with the problems that we already have. Dr. Messina, right?
Absolutely. I think the proper answer, and that's a great question that was just voiced. People get overwhelmed. Oh, my God, what kind of schooling, what kind of degrees do I need to lead a satisfactory life? And the answer is none. I think what's happening, there's so much information out there, some of it good, a lot of it bad, that it's getting very confusing for people to do the right thing. What they need is a simple plan to follow. And this really isn't all that complicated. It basically is comprised of becoming aware, making a commitment, and taking action. And anybody could do that regardless of their socioeconomic level, regardless of their educational status. They have to become aware, be committed to leading a healthier lifestyle, and take some type of action toward that.
Well, and for all of you out there, I mean, action is really important. I know, you can go to the gym, okay, but buying a membership isn't enough. I mean, you actually have to go, and if you think, even if I bought you the gym membership, that I'm going to do your push-ups for you, I probably am not. And the idea is to simply let you understand that in the world we live in today, the stressors, the demands on our body for key nutrients, like Dr. Messina mentioned, if you're going to eat a steak, please get it and have it be grass-fed, hormone-free, antibiotic-free. The same thing with a chicken. I mean, you were eating chicken, you didn't probably know that it had hormones and antibiotics in it when you were trying to lose weight before.
Okay, so what do I do? Pick up, before I go make a reservation,
Yes.
I mean, I call them and say, I'm planning to have steak tonight.
Yes.
Could you please tell me where do you get your meat? That's okay to do? How often do you think that happens today?
Not enough.
Not enough. I mean, obviously it's... And look, if you think that Dr. Messina and I are monks sitting on top of a hill, ringing a bell, eating seagrass, that's not what we're doing, okay? Mm-hmm. But I will tell you this. When I go into a restaurant and it's fish, I say, is it farmed fish? And if it is, I'm not eating it. Here's why. Guess what they now feed to the fish? Corn.
Oh, my God. Yeah.
Can you imagine a trout eating an ear of corn? I mean, what kind of visual is that, right? But not only is it corn, it's been genetically modified, it's loaded with omega-6s, et cetera. So that's not just the solution. Now, and we know that, open seawater fish, got mercury, et cetera. It's not funny. It's almost like choose your poison. But there are steps you can take. If most of the time you can avoid corn-fed anything, look, they just... 2 months ago in USA Today, they come out, there's a new bacteria that I want Dr. Messina to comment on. It's called CRE. There's no antibiotic known to man right now that can stop it. If you get it, it's 50% fatal. It's in 31 states. So now what do we do? Dr. Messina, now what do we do? What about CRE?
Yeah, this has been going on. We've had MRSA. We've had all of these types of bacteria that have come about, and the basic reason they've come about is they have become antibiotic resistant. Our liberal use of antibiotics is causing these bacteria to mutate and form defenses against ever-growing strengths of antibiotics. One of the big problems we're facing, and it's another one of those issues everybody knows about, but we still do it, as Peter was alluding to, the cattle, the pigs, the chickens are being given antibiotics. Guess what? You inject an antibiotic into a cow, eat a steak, and you're consuming the antibiotics. And we're wondering why these new resistant strains of bacteria are proliferating. But nobody is looking at it from that end. The knee-jerk response is to find a newer, broader spectrum antibiotic to kill the newer, stronger bacteria. Instead of giving it less fertile soil to evolve and grow in the first place.
Yesterday, I just watched a news piece that said in California, they passed a law to make the cage that the chickens are kept in twice the size or maybe 3 times the size than what they're doing right now. And the rest of the states in America are going crazy because they know how this works. If it passed in California, it's going to start passing in other states. And they're all worried about the cost. And the reason why they're doubling or tripling the size of the cage so the chicken can actually turn around.
Yeah.
This is insane.
Well,
this is crazy.
Let me comment on what Dr. Messina was saying, okay? This is FDA's own thing, okay? So first of all, we have about 5% of the world's population, okay? We're now consuming 50% of all antibiotics on planet Earth, and 80% of those antibiotics are given to animals that you're eating, that I'm eating, that our kids are eating, that most people are completely unaware of. That is such a simple thing. That just, to me, makes common sense. Because remember, if it's a plant or an animal, we eat what they eat. Now, what do you think's happening in our body when we're eating this stuff that, number one, has been fed corn or a fish or whatever it is? The body begins to react. Not in a great way. Guess what starts to happen? We actually just so we react to processed food, we become stressed out. Because the body's going, what is this stuff? I want protein. That's why a poor source of protein affects you for 3 months. We talked about before, you talk about stress on the body. So you eat something and you have acid indigestion. Do you feel really good? Do you feel calm? Are you like relaxed? Or are you thinking, oh my God, I feel like I'm going to throw up? But then we have the commercials with my favorite guy, right? Going, yeah, I'm eating this Prilosec here at the county fair, having these corn dogs. And I got acid indigestion, but I got Prilosec.
Well, there's another one. I forgot which one. There's a better one than Prilosec.
Well, if that's...
That works now within 30 minutes.
Oh, in 30 minutes. Okay, well, but great. Right, Dr.
Whatever
Messina, so that
is.
we're justifying... We're justifying the fact we can eat horrible stuff because we have a drug, not even recognizing what it's doing to the human body, the amount of stress that it takes for the body, even to create a reaction as an anti-acid in response. That's not a normal response in the human body to be creating acid reflux. Right, doctor?
Absolutely not. And we're getting back to the main point of this, why we basically are talking about toxicity, deficiency, overweight, and stress as being a syndrome that leads to accelerated aging because they're all interconnected. They're all interconnected. Why is the guy eating the corn dogs? Because they taste good and because he craves them. Why does he crave them? Because they've got that magic combination of salt, fat, and sugar that drives him to the edge. And he has to keep coming back for more. So he gets acid indigestion, acid reflux. He takes the Prilosec because they tell him that that's going to make him feel better initially until 10 minutes go by and he reaches for the next corn dog because he can't help himself. So it's all interconnected.
So how come we don't have commercials on commercial television that says, don't eat this garbage?
Because that wouldn't make money.
Right. You knew your own answer.
Yeah,
I just. So here's my point. So Dr. Messina, seriously, straight up, if you have do you understand that when medicine first described what we now call disease, it was actually called dis-ease. Okay. Mm-hmm. So Dr. Messina, in a situation where someone has acid reflux or they have any forms of digestive tract illness, is the body, by virtue of that, A, stressed out, and B, warning us that something isn't right?
Yeah, it's definitely not in balance. The body is amazing if we give it half a chance. It always tends toward equilibrium. It always auto-regulates. When we have these type of dis-eases, it means that we've overdone something in one manner or another. We've eaten too much. We've not exercised enough. We've exercised too much. We've done something we shouldn't do. For every action we take that isn't a smart action to take, there is a metabolic consequence to be paid. And since the body is all interconnected, it starts affecting systems and leads to dis-ease.
So I think what I'm also hearing here is what we're asking people to do is to change their automatic habits. Mm-hmm. And that's a very important piece. Because what you guys are talking about as experts, this is not really that hard.
No.
No,
I mean, it's not that. It sounds really complicated and really smart.
So do you feel better now that it's not as complicated as you thought?
Well, yes, because I feel that I don't have to go study all the stuff that you have studied.
You don't want to become a nerd like me.
I can just trust. I can just trust that the information you're giving out, and I do, it is correct, and it is correct. And what I'm learning is, and I hope the viewers are learning the same thing, is now when I go shopping, I have to be awake and conscious that, hey, wait a minute, I have to be responsible here and I have to make a choice. I have to actually pay attention and maybe ask questions that I have never asked before.
And in doing that, don't get stressed out.
Yeah, I know.
Don't get stressed out.
But I don't think this is comfortable for people because this is not what they used to.
We're interrupting their behavior.
Yes.
That's what we're doing. We're interrupting their behavior in a good way to say, look, we cannot rely on the government, the drug companies, the hospitals, or even people as talented as my good friend, doctor. We have the best doctors in the world. We have incredible medical devices. But the whole system is collapsing because we're relying on procedural interventions instead of preventative interventions like taking vitamin D3, like taking CoQ10, like taking omega-3s, like getting B12s, and on and on and on and on. And not relying, even a multivitamin, a single point of reference, still not enough. And so the food choices that we make are extremely important, but they're not enough. We must now begin to add other things, organic and as clean as possible, but these other things that we're talking about today. Right. It's a real solution.
Right, but it's a good beginning. I mean,
it's a great beginning.
It is a good beginning to cut out fast food. It is a good beginning to cut out all the pop that we are all addicted to. All the things that we're addicted to is a good thing to begin to wean off of them. Right.
Right.
I have a great one for stress that I did with a couple of patients. I mean, they were really, really stressed out, asking for medications to alleviate stress. And I saw what the source of their stress was. So I made a deal with them. I said, for the next 30 days, I don't want you to watch the television. I don't want you to read a newspaper. And whatever you do, don't listen to talk radio. Try this for 30 days and let's see how you feel. I swear to God, they came back and said, oh my God, I feel so much better. Now, why is that? Negative, bad news sells. It's in the newspapers, it's on television, it's certainly on talk radio. Do we have any control over it? We want to be aware, but it's starting that cycle of, oh my God, you know, the Chicken Little syndrome, the sky's falling, and we have no immediate control over it. The only thing we do have control over is our perspective of it and how we're going to manage our own life and how we can live a healthier life. This is all about habits and changing bad habits into good habits, which lead to a healthier lifestyle, which lead to a more rewarding and fulfilling life. It's that simple.
Yeah.
And we need these preventative interventions. We're giving people awareness. Yeah. We're saying to them, I'll give you one free piece of advice for all of you listeners out there. One of the best sources of protein in the world, and you can find it, it's available in, probably you're going to have to look at an organic store or someplace like that. But if you're going to consume a protein, one of the best in the world, the two best that I know of, come from either Australia or New Zealand. Why? Because they don't feed the animals corn. They don't inject them with anything. The animals eat grass, and they use a low-temperature pasteurization process. That's a simple thing. If people would have that for breakfast every morning, instead of bacon and eggs or yogurt or anything else, honestly, it could make an enormous difference in their lives. Because the human body doesn't store protein. It stores fats and carbs. And when you're low on protein, the body knows, including your brain, protein is critical for the brain. So when you're low on protein, guess what the body does? It stresses out. How simple is that? Is that complicated?
No, it's not complicated. So I know that one of my weak points is bread, and I actually have completely, I'm going to have a party tonight to go to because my daughter is going to be 30 years old today. She is 30 years old today. Thank you. And I know what they're going to do. They're going to cook this and that, the other thing. And I already saw earlier today, all the buns, burger buns. I already knew what's coming on the menu.
What's coming down the road.
I don't have the power yet to control
what they're going to cook.
Right. Okay, but soon I will. But not yet.
Right.
But soon I will.
Well, as soon as you make them aware.
So I will have to be a leader for myself because I can't change what they're doing right now, and I know they probably already started. But I'm not going to eat that stuff.
Right.
So I'm going to look for salads. I'm going to look for what I know is good for me and serves me.
Dr. Messina, just comment on what you know about white bread and how, horrible it is for us. And I'll tell you what I know.
I mean, commercially made white bread just has so many additives, preservatives.
99 cents. Talk about the one that's 99 cents.
99 cents. Why do you think people are buying it? But it's a processed food. Most of the nutrition, most of the ingredient is lacking. It says it has everything on the label, but in which form is it? Is it bioavailable? Does it get into the body? And again, we know that the food industry is looking for that bliss point. So they're making it palatable so you'll come back for more. But as far as nutritional value, it's going to give you the RDA, and we talked about RDI before, but it's going to tell you what requirements are on there and what it's delivering. But is what is on the label, is that getting into your body? That's the big question.
So, Steve, what I know about it, imagine what it does inside the human body. Imagine paper mache inside your body before it hardens. You know, the paste, that's basically what it turns into. I mean, the problem is that so much of this food that we're consuming, they list on the label the ingredients, but not enough to do you any good, just so they can list it. So it'll make you feel good, but it's kind of like cereal. It's dead flakes in a cardboard coffin. I've said that before. You'd be better off eating the box. At least you get some fiber. But people have cereal every single morning. But they don't have one bowl. They have two. Why? Because there's no nutrients. And then about 2 hours later, they're starving. They're at the vending machines. This is what's going on. And it's getting worse and worse and worse. But now we have more drugs to deal with the effects. It's almost like the food and drug, the food makes us sick.
They have an affiliate program.
Well, I don't know about that. But no, seriously, it's just to the point where if we don't make some simple changes, then don't be surprised with the results. Don't be surprised with the outcomes. Because it's sort of like we keep Einstein's definition of insanity going day after day. We're doing the same thing over and over and over again. Like so many people say, well, I'm going to go on a diet after Thanksgiving. We know January 1st is the biggest gym day, and but go in the gym, 1st of February, there's no one in there. Because people have all these great intentions, but they're using the wrong mechanisms. Because unless you can supply the body with this, number one, baseline of the nutrients we need and get a way for the body to absorb them, then you're just whistling Dixie. That make sense?
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. Yeah, I just want to make sure that we're really clear to the viewers that it's really about our body has to be in a shape that it can handle what it needs to handle and what it was designed to handle and how it was designed to operate. And that's where we're off.
And the nutraceutical requirements of the human body today are greater than they've ever been in the history of mankind. Because of this fast pace, we use up minerals, we use up nutrients faster. Even if you're not running 100 yards, you're working, you're day trading, or you're on Facebook. I mean, some people spend 5 or 6 hours a day on Facebook, which, by the way, can be stressful because then someone said something about me. I don't go on Facebook for that reason, I guess, but I'm just saying that we have all these stressors and all these demands of life, and yet our food, our nutritional value is going like that. Then what happens, our stress level goes up. And as stress level goes up, now we get fat. And then we add toxins in. We got a great cake that we're eating every single day. And then we wonder, it's not working.
And why we're taking 20 pills.
Why are we taking 20 pills? I mean, we're going to consume this year in this country, I mean, it's insane, the number of pills we're going to take. And I'm not against drugs. But I really don't think that long term that that's what we were intended to do. Now, there are certain conditions. You've got to have them. And we have we have the best in the world. But Prilosec is not the solution. The solution would be probably not to eat the corn dog in the first place. That's just me.
Well, but I talked to you about this from the very beginning when we started this, is that I don't want people just to hear from us all the bad news.
Right.
We have tons of bad news that we can report, and they are scientific.
I have a lot more if you want.
Yeah, I know you have tons more, and they're scientifically proven. But I don't want us to be what commercial television does, which is just deliver like what the doctor said, Dr. Messina said earlier, is that, the sky's falling. I don't want us to sound like that, because how I would like us to sound like is that, look, Peter has spent 10 years to get this information, and nobody has done that. I don't know anybody that has done that. I mean, there might be somebody out there that exists, but I don't know that person, and I have never seen it on commercial television or radio or anywhere. But here's the thing: you've done the homework, and here it is. It's pretty obvious to me, and I hope it's obvious to the viewers what's going on, and it's our bodies can really handle what it needs to handle.
Yes,
it really does. It is a beautifully designed machine, and we have to give it the credit that it deserves. All we need to do is give it what it's asking for. And it's not asking for a Big Mac.
No. No. And I think to our point of the show today about stress, you see when the body doesn't get those nutrients, it automatically goes looking for them. And in that hunt process, we actually start to get stressed out. I mean, they did a study. They said the thought of going on a diet raises your stress level. Just thinking about it. So, Dr. Messina, as a physician, and I know you're extremely concerned and very dedicated about this. As a matter of fact, you basically gave up, I think, your regular clinical practice to go into research in, spearheading big drug studies and stuff. But based on what you've seen and what you've learned, do you feel now that this whole idea about what we're talking about today, to enable the body to do what it's intended to do, if we just do some simple things, could really bring healthcare costs down, eliminate a lot of misery that people are having simply because they don't know what to do?
Oh, absolutely. How do I want to say this? The solution is so simple that it's almost painful. The solution is basically becoming aware, changing habits, and making a commitment to lead a healthier lifestyle. It's really that simple. You know, we were saying before that cows were not engineered to consume corn, and that's true. I took a biology course. They're a ruminant. They have a specialized stomach that was engineered by whoever created them to consume grass. I think history will bear out, maybe 100 years from now, that the human being's stomach was never engineered to consume a Big Mac. You know, that day will come because the evidence is mounting. We have an obesity epidemic. We have a type 2 diabetes epidemic. And what's the predominant food source that we're putting in, and what are the results that we're seeing? If we don't like what we're seeing, we have to try something different. And we have to be willing to accept that maybe what our philosophy was before it was wrong, and that we have to start looking at some new information and trying some new things, which in essence really aren't new things. They're things healthy people were doing centuries ago that we fell out of step in doing.
And then it's just so, it's that simple. It's not complicated. It's simple. But it's not just a matter of saying, well, I'm going to eat healthy. No, you really need to begin to learn what does that really look like, okay? Don't think it's organic, not enough. Don't think it's just I'm going to eat fish. You've got to bring in these other things that simply aren't in the best food that we have available to us. Forget processed food. Let's not even go there. Let's just go to the best market, the farmer's market, etc. It still lacks those things. You still need vitamin D3. You need the omegas. You need a whole spectrum of things that if you add them, and it's pretty simple to do, you probably are going to live a much more productive, a much healthier, happier, and longer life. And isn't that everyone's goal, to live healthier longer? And stress, by eliminating stress, by giving your body, I mean, we're still going to have stress with money and the other things. But my goodness, let's at least start with the basics. Give your body a fighting chance to not let food be a stressor.
Yeah, no, I understand. And I certainly, that's what I want for myself. I want what works, and I want to stop doing what doesn't work. Right. And that's really not that complicated.
Right, right.
If we just look, all we have to do is stop.
Well, isn't this show about awareness?
Yeah.
Aren't you about consciousness? Mm-hmm. Isn't that one of the things that attracted you to this whole sort of methodology, this syndrome that Dr. Messina and I are writing about? That's it.
Absolutely. And if I can get it, anybody that is willing to be awake can get it.
Well, willing to be open.
Open.
Just
willing to be awake and
open. If you didn't know what you think you know, and you gave up those prejudices, what's possible? Anything. Yeah. Anything.
Yeah, absolutely. So, guess what? It's the end of the Conscious Hour again, and I want to thank Dr. Nick Messina, who is admittedly, by his own words, is a recovering doctor, which I want to really acknowledge you for, because I don't know too many doctors. I don't know how many people in our seats here in the studio would admit that they knew a doctor that admitted that. So you are one out of probably a million. or 10 million.
I don't know. A lot.
But that's huge. So thank you very much for being here and giving us the education and our viewers the education that we really need to begin to change our habits.
It has been my distinct pleasure to be here.
Thank you. And I also want to thank you, Peter, because without you, none of this would be happening. And I want to thank everybody that's in the studio here with us, and also the viewers, and also the crew that's making it happen, because without them, none of this would be happening.
Right. Black screen.
And I just want to remind everybody that please interact with us and go to our website, which is newhealthconversation.tv. Leave us comments. Tell us what you want to hear about. We're going to make a tremendous effort to put as much information on the website as possible in terms of what are the new habits that you need to develop and what are the new nutritional stuff and minerals that you need to think about putting into your diet. And, we're here every 2 weeks. There's going to be a new episode of the show. So we're looking forward to continue to educate America and the world. So thank you so much. I love you, Peter. My life has changed because of you. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
So thank you, everybody, and we will see you next time.
Was killing myself with the food I eat, toxic to my health, till I got the news. There's another path that I could choose.